welcome to GlideFast On Air. I'm Janet Mesh. I'm the VP of Marketing here at GlideFast Consulting, and I'll be moderating today's webinar, Make It Pop, Designing Elegant Service Portals Your Users Will Appreciate. And I'm very excited to introduce you to our presenter, Sarah Toulson. She's portal developer at GlideFast Consulting.
Hello.
Awesome. So before we get started, we'd like to give you some background information on GlideFast. So GlideFast Consulting is a consulting firm that is dedicated exclusively to ServiceNow. As an Elite ServiceNow Partner, our expert team of developers and architects have worked on both sides of the table, so on the customer side and on the consulting side. Our company was founded by ServiceNow architects, and we're proud to have a team of over 100 experienced consultants and a range of accolades that you can see here on the screen. In addition to the presentation, please definitely submit your questions. We'll be monitoring the Q&A throughout today's session. So definitely send over any questions for Sarah to answer at the end of her presentation. And as another perk of attending the webinar today, we'll be giving away a $50 Visa gift card. So definitely stay until the end. We'll be announcing the winner after the Q&A. And now I'd like to hand things over to Sarah to take it away and share her expert best practices on ServiceNow portal design. Go for it, Sarah.
All right. Hey, everybody. Like Janet said, I'm Sarah Toulson. Today, we're going to discuss a few ways you can improve your service portal design to ensure your users have a portal that not only solves their business problems, but provides an experience that your users will enjoy. So why discuss design? Service portal's been out for a few years now, and increasingly our clients want custom portals that reflect their brand and culture, as well as supporting that functionality their users need. With little to no design guidance, we often end up with what I'm going to refer to as Millennium Falcon portals. I've seen some real Jedi Masters on the platform customize service portal to do some amazing things for our clients. Some of these masters have come to me and noted that color, fonts, and other design elements just aren't their forte and just aren't something they're comfortable tackling. They're busy making it go 0.5 past light speed. Why bother with a new coat of paint? Well, let's consider Luke Skywalker's first impression of Millennium Falcon. It took stormtroopers to encourage him to get on board. I'm not thinking we want to send stormtroopers after our users to get them on board with using Service Portal. Which brings me to my first point regarding the importance of a good design. This year's Nelson Frank Salary Survey revealed that user adoption challenges are the #1 problem you can expect to face during a ServiceNow implementation. A slick UI UX experience that is easy on the eyes and brains of our users can help alleviate this challenge by building user trust and also by encouraging user adoption. If the UI looks like it can be trusted to get them where they need to go, they're more likely to get on board. This UX law is known as the aesthetic usability effect. Second, good design communicates. More than just presenting pretty pixels, good design presents information in a way that can be easily understood. If your users can't find their way around your portal and achieve what they've come to do, even the most beautiful UI in the world will have failed as a design. We're going to explore some design concepts that help foster good, intuitive communication with your users, such as the use of whitespace, color, and typography. And last, good design solves organizational problems. The ultimate purpose of a service portal is to get your users to the solutions they need, whether that's fixing a broken computer, looking up benefits information, or requesting a service. Good design ensures that not only the big problems are solved, like getting your users to schedule time with IT instead of calling in, but the little ones are solved as well, such as having that password reset function set up, but nobody's using it. Before we even get started with fonts and colors and all the fun things, I want to discuss 2 principles that create a framework within which we're going to consider style and flourish. One of these principles, one that has a tendency to get left behind in portal design, is to keep your design user-centric. As developers, we have a tendency to view the portal the way we see it, as tech-savvy people who know the platform in and out and are comfortable with its quirks and nomenclature. Don't design for you. Design for the people that are going to be using the portal. In doing so, I want to especially focus on 2 particular types of users: non-technical users and those with accessibility concerns. So I joke with my colleagues here at GlideFast that I design portals for my mom. And in truth, I've shown her a prototype or 2 just to see how she interprets what I've built. Truly though, one of the best things I've found for ensuring my service portal designs are going to serve their purpose is by defining an imaginary user for myself. Give this person a name, a life, quirks, the things that hold them back from using Service Portal. And then ensure your Service Portal is as friendly a place as it can be for them. Sometimes we even have to help our clients remember who their user is. My favorite person to use is Becky. Becky is the now retired city clerk for Daphne, Alabama, the city where I live and once worked as an assistant clerk. She is central to the community at City Hall. She is wonderful for helping the citizens that come into the office. She does have great hair, and she makes cornbread so good that fights have broken out for the last piece. However, Becky's going to readily admit that she doesn't do computers so well. She prefers the file and triplicate analog approach and would rather call the city's one IT guy than try to navigate a ticketing system. What she needs is a clear, friendly path that's just as intuitive for her as browsing any of her favorite websites. So who is your user? Maybe your user's Ben Kenobi, you know, that guy that's been around since before the company was founded, the one that drops sick wisdom on the new hires and probably won't give 2 weeks notice when he suddenly decides to retire. Design for Becky, design for Ben, design for the people that will actually be clicking that order now button. Ultimately, those people are why we do what we do. There are 3 particular things we can do to keep in mind to ensure our portals are friendly for our everyday non-technical users. First, mind the nomenclature you use. Maybe your company culture is a little less formal. Perhaps instead of a list of top viewed knowledge base articles, you present the user with a list of frequently asked questions or how-to guides. Instead of internal employment opportunities, how about just jobs? Look for places that a user has to stop, even for a millisecond, and consider whether or not something is going to take them where they want to go. As much as possible, within the given restraints of company culture and politics, default to the most obvious naming conventions you can achieve. Here we worked with a client to turn the out-of-box widget for top viewed knowledge articles into an easier to digest most viewed articles, coupled with a catch-all button they could click if they didn't find what they were looking for. Second, look for ways to minimize the number of choices you're giving your user at one given time. This is going to help them make decisions about where to go and what they need more quickly. In short, you're saving them from the analysis paralysis of choosing among 50 different catalog items or 4 different similarly styled lists. Categories and limits on the number of records shown are some of the ways we control the number of choices our users have to make. But one of the places that tends to overload users in a portal is right on the homepage. I've seen many portal examples that have 3 different lists across the page in one row with announcements and system status all right there together, like you see here in the out-of-box service portal. It's a bit much to take in all at once, especially when all the panels have same or similar styling and are set right on top of each other. One way to combat this is by spacing the elements out. Give the introduction to the service catalog, knowledge base, and other priority sections your users need their own space on the homepage. We've achieved this with a few of our clients, allowing them to consider one type of content at a time. Here you can see 3 of the 5 sections I put on the homepage. I've used bright color blocks that correspond with their branding to divide up different sections by purpose. At the top, users can easily search for content or click one of those venerably worded catch-all solutions. Second, I've put the styled announcements widget in a row all by itself, with a later added option to hide if there were no announcements. Last, you see independent sections where the user can take action on different types of content. Because I've clearly labeled each section of the website, in addition to providing separation with alternating background colors, a user can quickly scan and determine which sections they can ignore, reducing what they have to actively consider at one time. Last, we can help our users by providing multiple paths to where they want to go. Take a bit of the Amazon approach. From their homepage, you can easily search for what you want or browse. Multiple buttons on the homepage may lead users to the same service catalog, but might be worded differently or lead to different catalog views, or category views rather. Going back to our prior example, I actually have multiple places where the user can end up in the service catalog, just presented in different ways. This is really going to depend on what your users prioritize. Maybe one user will respond to the submitted ticket, while another would rather seek out a more specific solution. Alongside taking non-technical users into consideration, I want us to pay special attention to ensuring our portals are set up for accessibility. We want to make sure that all of our users, regardless of the challenges they face, can easily come to the service portal and get what they need. The most common disabilities I've seen considered for portal design are those with visual impairments, such as blind, low vision, or colorblind users. There are many other types of differently abled users that accessibility guidelines cover as well, such as those with fine motor skill impairments. While there are many resources and principles we can go into to ensure that our sites are readily accessible, I want to focus on three particular things, the first of which is contrast. Here we are looking to assist our visually impaired users with clear color contrast ratios. Contrast is achieved by a certain degree of difference between the background color and the text or content that's displayed on it. Typically, we use white background with black text, which has a very high contrast ratio and is easy to see. I see this issue pop up in a number of places, but one of the top trouble spots I tend to see is the use of photography, especially behind that search bar at the top of the homepage. Let's take a look at an example. Without any other elements to help that text stand out, it can be difficult to distinguish amid the myriad of colors in the background photo. With a few changes, though, we can improve the legibility. We can remedy this by use of a color overlay, is what I've used here, and some text shadowing to really help that tagline stand out. Be very cautious of the contrast ratios you create for buttons, icon links, and other pieces of content in your portal, and do your best to ensure the contrast is high enough to meet the accessibility standards and be easy to read. The second thing we can do to ensure the accessibility of our portals is create and maintain visual hierarchy. Ensure the most important information stands out, and essential navigational elements such as links and buttons are easy to locate on the page. Put the most important items first, such as the Something's Broken button, and ensure related items are grouped together to help users who have vision challenges or trouble focusing on the screen. Additionally, placing hierarchy into your code can help users with screen readers navigate the site. Last way we can ensure our portal is properly set up for accessibility is by use of the ARIA controls, alternative image text, element roles, and other tools in the HTML of our widgets. This enables screen readers to properly navigate the site and communicate what the user is interacting with. Overall, you want to ask your stakeholders about specific accessibility concerns and ensure your user testing phases include a diverse set of users in terms of product familiarity, computer literacy, and disability. Some organizations will put their most familiar people on testing the new portal, but I encourage you to remember to ask users outside the core department to help test. Additionally, encourage testing beyond errors and functionality to include just assurance that the portal you've built is as intuitive as the stakeholders and developers believe it to be. Now, we've discussed the importance of considering our user. Let's take a minute to talk about another framework we need to consider when designing our portals, the many devices we use to access them. I want to encourage you to begin your custom portal design from the ground up by designing mobile first. When you're considering how your portal will present to a user, begin with considering how it's going to look on mobile devices. Begin your code this way as well. I found it's much easier to start small and scale up than it is to go back and fix the issues that come up due to forgotten smaller screens. Let's take a look at some of the tips that are going to make your UI shine on smaller screens and set the stage for a sleek experience on larger screens as well. On smaller screens, on smaller touchscreens rather, we don't have the precision of a mouse. So one of the best things you can do to help your users navigate on their mobile devices is ensure links, buttons, and other elements that they're going to interact with are large enough to tap without a problem. Big space stations, not small moons. Give ample spacing around buttons and links to make it easy to select one, especially if there are multiple selectable options in close proximity to each other. In the example on the right, these two buttons stack on top of each other, taking up the full width of the column. On larger devices, these buttons responsively move to be next to each other underneath the search bar. As a bonus, an increased size of a tappable and clickable element will assist users with fine motor skill impairment. Next, when setting up the UI for a smaller screen, we need to remember that the real estate is at an absolute premium. So we should attempt to cut out any padding, borders, etc. that may be rendered extraneous because of how the content flows on smaller screen sizes. Using the same example, you can see that the smaller screen only shows one panel at a time. In this case, our My Items panel. Because of this, there's no real need for the margins you see on either side that shows the gray background. If needed, we could take back that margin to give more room for our content on either side. To do this, we could utilize media queries in our CSS to dictate when and how the margins and box shadows behave. Another benefit to designing mobile first is that it is much easier to keep the experience consistent as screen sizes change. From the bottom up, we're adding features. That being said, if we're showcasing content via panels or especially tabs, things like that, we want the experience to carry over to mobile so our users have a consistent experience. Ultimately, we want to use the same tactics to get our user from point A to point B, so the transition from mobile to desktop and back again is fairly seamless. Tabbed content, like I mentioned, should still be tabbed content on mobile. As a special note, be sure to ensure your content presents very well on large monitors. There's a tendency to assume, which is my tendency to assume, that the content displays well on a laptop. It's going to display well on those 4K monitors. I've made this mistake of not ensuring this was the case and ended up with content that was much more difficult to navigate because it was so insanely stretched out across the screen. Max width is definitely your friend here. Okay, last, I have to make a special note about Flexbox. Flexbox is absolutely a part of my service portal gospel truth, if there is such a thing. While Service Portal comes with this great bootstrap-based grid that's easy to manipulate, using Flexbox within this grid has proved absolutely invaluable for me to ensure the elements are behaving well as your screen reflows for different sizes. Justifying and aligning the content is especially much easier when you set up the Flexbox framework for your content. Okay, now that we've discussed a few points that provide a framework for building a custom portal, I want to get into a few things that you can do to really make your portal shine. In a more general sense, I want you to look for ways to ensure that you have a cohesive, unified design. One of the easiest things you can do to help yourself is first find and use a brand or style guide. This is an example of a part of a style guide that GlideFast has developed for our product Fast Track. A good style guide will lay out all of the colors and fonts and logo use guidelines for a brand. A great style guide will also include web design standards such as button styles, restrictions on image use, etc., etc. With a style guide, you have one source of truth, which prevents guessing or asking for hex codes or font files that get buried in email chains. I am a victim of this. Now, there are two situations where this does not help you at all. One is where the organization in question doesn't want the portal to entirely emulate the brand. And the other, there's no style guide. When I'm presented with either one of these situations, I go into severe fact-finding mode. I'll ask questions for preferences. Do they want to use the same styles as on their other sites? If so, which ones? Color, fonts? Are there specific parts of their branding that they don't want to use? For example, with one recent client, I found the only real change to their branding they wanted to see was to use a secondary brand color as the primary for their portal. It changed the primary color in the portal from an orange to a more friendly shade of blue. Other questions to ask. Can they provide examples of sites that show the look and feel they're going for? And can they explain to you what exactly it is about those sites that they find so attractive? I'll initially get answers like, oh, we like Apple, or we like this brand, or we like that brand. But then, okay, what is it about it? Because Apple, for instance, is a very photography heavy site. And how is that going to work with the list and this and that and the other for a service portal? Is it the way the information's laid out? Is it the hover effects, the color scheme? I find that this tactic of asking for examples or having them point out other sites that they want to emulate extremely helpful. What it does is it's forcing your stakeholders to more concretely define what they will see as a successfully implemented design. Now, use your questions to dig deep. Some stakeholders may not care about the specifics and give you more creative freedom. Others may know what they want, but you have to help them quantify it by asking lots of questions. Once you've gathered as much feedback as you can, I highly recommend going through a process of creating wireframes and even some fully mocked up designs if necessary, especially if there's a lot of custom layout and stuff to how their portal is put together. I found a client that sees a mock-up and agrees to it has a better sense of what they're going to get as an end product. You can clarify any style changes at the beginning of the process instead of having to go back after everything is built. All right, these next 2 points are some of the best weapons in your arsenal for achieving a cohesive design. The first of these is to utilize the CSS includes on the theme record. Here you can set up the styles you're going to repeatedly use throughout the portal, such as buttons or links or headings and what have you. On many of the portals I build, I'll have at least 2 CSS includes, if not more. If I'm using custom fonts, for example, I'll have a CSS include linking to the font files, such as from Google Fonts. And the second one is where I lay out headings, body type, and other font-specific styles. Then I'll have a separate one for other styles like the buttons and things like that. Let's take a look at an example. The panel you see on the right is a panel style I've used in many of the portals I've built. I've used it as a container for lists, buttons, reports, service catalog items, search bars, and menus. And that one, in fact, is a menu. The code you see on the left is taken from a CSS include from the same portal. On any of my widgets, I can just add this one class and achieve this look. With the code set in the CSS include instead of the widget, I only have to change that code in one place, and it's going to ensure that all the widgets that use that class change in a uniform manner. I end up spending less time to make tweaks and changes, and I don't have to worry about missing that one widget that has a blue border when all the rest have a green one. If I need to override the style or change it for a specific case or even add to it, I can do that on the widget level. The other tool in your arsenal is the ability to use SAS variables in our CSS includes. ServiceNow gave us this immense blessing in the Madrid release, and there was much rejoicing throughout the land. At least for me, anyway. It made me very happy. SAS variables can be used to set colors or any other CSS property. I use them for colors mostly, but ServiceNow uses them for a host of things such as border radius, margin, padding, etc. Use these variables to store any information you want to reuse throughout the site. You're going to set it in one place, one time, and then you don't have to go digging around in your widget to make sure that you're getting the right color value or margin or whatever. I want to take a look at now how I've used this in the past. This is a demo portal I put together for GlideFast earlier this year. If we take a look at the portal record, you can see where I've set up a number of SAS variables that control the colors for this portal. Here you can see that not only the brand primary color is set, but I've also included shades of the primary color as well as an established secondary color with shades. And I know you can do this by calculating, but I'm really picky about my shade values, so I just set them manually. But essentially by changing these I think 10 variables right here, I can rebrand this entire portal by changing one record. Okay, remember this last point, style consistently. The styles you create speak to your user. Defining links, setting up your visual hierarchy for the information you present, or grouping like items together. Applying these styles consistently garners the user trust and again increases the odds that they're going to get on board with using the portal. Buttons, links, and headings should be applied consistently across the portal. If links are green with an underline on the home page, ensure they're not blue and bold somewhere else. Ultimately, ask yourself whether or not your user would be able to trust that a style you've put in place indicates the same thing across the site. Okay, now that we've spent some time, we've considered our users' needs, giving them a consistent experience across all their devices with a cohesive design they can trust. Let's get into some of the tools you have at your disposal to help point your users in the direction you want them to go. There have been books, articles, and entire websites dedicated to web design and its myriad components. I have a whole shelf full of books just on typography. For now, we're going to focus on 4 big areas I've seen can really assist for the specific use cases we see in Service Portal: Whitespace, typography, images and icons, and the use of interactive elements. We're going to start with Whitespace. I've heard it said around the developer sphere that white space is wasted space, and I'm here to tell you that no, it is not wasted space, I promise. I'll admit though, I even have to remind myself that no matter how much all that space around the search bar annoys me, because couldn't we do something else with it? It's there for a purpose. So what is white space exactly? It is the space, it's sometimes referred to as negative space in between elements. It's not necessarily white. It can look like whatever, but it's that space in between your elements. It's your margin and padding. It's the breathing room you give to your buttons, your lists, and your other elements. From the largest panels all the way down to the space in between the individual letter forms in your content. So if it's not wasted space, then what does this emptiness do? Well, using my previous example of the search bar, it draws attention. In the case of the out-of-box portal, with all that space around it and the other elements relatively far away, the user is drawn to consider the search as their first way to find what they're looking for. As another example, I mean, really, what else are you going to do on this page? There are items in the footer of Google's homepage, but the big focus here is use that search bar. A second benefit Whitespace provides to your users is that it prevents choice paralysis, what we talked about earlier. We talked about spacing out the elements so our users can more easily make decisions about where they want to go. Whitespace is a marvelous vehicle for doing that. Spread out your elements with enough space so that they only have to have a few options to consider. Additionally, providing the white space around a group of elements, like a group of buttons, for instance, that gives the impression that they're together for a reason. So your users will take to considering that group. Next, while we do want to help our user find their way quickly, we still need to give them a chance to rest for a moment. These small mental breaks, the space that's created and what they have to consider, it keeps them from getting overwhelmed. It increases their willingness to stay and browse the site for longer if need be. For instance, look at the space in between the main points on this slide. Your eyes are actually resting before considering each point. Last, proper use of white space can greatly assist in the legibility of your content. A huge wall of text can be a strain to read. Increasing the line height, the space between each line of content, it can keep your eyes from crossing, especially on those longer knowledge base articles. All right, next, many of you have probably seen this as the basic argument for why font choices matter. And while this conveys a lot of truth, typographical choices have so much to offer by way of enhancing the portal experience. One of the most obvious things your fonts can help you do is establish that visual hierarchy we've been talking about. We see this most often in our portals by use of the heading tags, but you can have other font styles for buttons or footer links or other items if you think it's warranted. You can see here a type system that I created for an internal project here at GlideFast. I've used 3 fonts here. Headings 1 through 3 are variations of the typeface Railway. You can use one font for an entire system if you want, which I believe is what the out-of-box does. Here I've used the font weight, the style using italics, and all caps to create 3 very distinct headings using the one font. Also, let me point out that I am very limited in my use of an all caps heading, and I have added a substantial amount of letter spacing, the spacing there in between each actual character, to keep that legibility high. The 4th heading, body text, and navigation are 2 different fonts. Sometimes I'll set a different font for longer text content like the knowledge base articles to ensure I'm using a font built for that purpose. I personally I personally, for example, would not use Railway for everything in a portal, as it can be a bit overwhelming and a little harder to read than some of the other typefaces that are meant for long form writing. Small links, such as the navigation text there on the bottom, are optimized in a font that is made with simple letter forms for the express purpose of clarity at smaller font sizes. Off that note, your font choices can do much to enhance the legibility of your site, which can be especially useful to our users with vision impairment. Choosing fonts with distinguishable letter forms can help users with dyslexia, for example, tremendously. Here's an example of that. Here I've got 3 different fonts showing the numeral 1, the lowercase l, and the capital I. You can easily see that where some might struggle with the letters and numbers that look indistinguishable on certain fonts. Spacing, as I mentioned earlier, increases the legibility if you decide to use all caps. In this example here, you can see where I've chosen the all caps approach. On the button at the top, there's plenty of room for the larger letters. This message is short, and so the capitalization does not diminish legibility. Below in that bottom section, all caps is used in a similar method, but only for the secondary information, again in little short pieces. On this example, we can also see the effect font weight has on legibility. Font weights, such as very thin and very heavy weight fonts, can present legibility issues if we're not careful, especially if they are doubled with other visual inhibitors, such as being used for inverted text, black background, white text, or dark background, light text, or with poor color contrast. The secondary text on the bottom section is in a lighter color and would be illegible if not for the larger size of the text. As a final note, I want to encourage you to avoid red and green text if at all possible to assist colorblind users, and as noted earlier, to ensure that all text, whether inverted or not, has the appropriate contrast ratios for the font size chosen. Our third consideration for typography is the content we're pairing with the font. Ultimately, typography exists to honor the content, even down to the wanted ads in the paper. It should draw just enough attention to your content that the user notices it and reads it if and only when necessary. And as we saw in one of my previous examples of a type system, the navigation and body text do not share the same more flashy typeface of the heading tags. They serve a different purpose, as does their content type. Ultimately, font choices can breathe life into a portal design, whether you're looking to create something friendly and focused or modern and sophisticated. Use your type for an easy way to give a custom look to your portals without customizing a single widget if you so desire. Okay, next I'd like to point out that yes, I know service portals are by and large utilitarian websites, but that doesn't mean we can't make it look a little less utilitarian. Truth be told, I love adding images to our sites for that friendly, welcoming vibe that they put off. Beyond that, images and icons do enhance the usability of your portal. First way they do that is by drawing attention. Images can do many things. Welcome user to the portal. Point to an announcement they shouldn't ignore. Studies have actually shown that an image of a human looking at something will actually cause the user to follow the gaze of the person in the image. If you really want to push your users to a knowledge base, maybe a signpost with a friendly face will help point them in the right direction. As an example, in this portal homepage I showed earlier, I use images to give the user a sense of what they can expect from the page section. Another directional indicator that lets the user know whether or not this is their stop on the journey. Second, images create atmosphere. Remember that friendly vibe I mentioned? You can use background images or patterns and even solid colors just to add a sense of place or inject color into an otherwise neutral background. You can use the sense of atmosphere to incorporate and reinforce your brand or the mood you're setting for the site. Notice the background in that bottom section. That's actually an SVG pattern I've placed directly into the CSS. Placing a content block around it along with a judicious white space has created a focus point where the users can find additional resources if they're not finding what they need. Special note on icons. Icons can help shortcut a user's thought process when they're making decisions about where they need to go. Few guidelines when using them to make sure you're making best use of them. First of all, ensure the icon you've chosen clearly depicts the concept you're trying to convey. One thing I do is I will do a web search for my concept with the word icon, such as fixed computer icon. And then see what comes up and compare what I'm thinking to what everyone else on the interwebs has decided is a good interpretation for the concept. Another thing I'll do is I'll actually show a icon to my 10-year-old son and be like, what is that? And if he gets it anywhere in the ballpark, then I know I'm in the right direction. Second, remember that ServiceNow does not use the latest version of Font Awesome. It does incorporate Font Awesome icons into Service Portal, but it's not using the latest version, unless that's changed recently and I missed it, in which case I will be very sad. Font Awesome is about to release version 6. Service Portal has version 4.7 available out of box, and Font Awesome still has the documentation showing what icons are available under 4.7 that you can find online. And lastly, not everything needs an icon. I caution you to remember, if you use icons on everything, nothing's going to stand out. Okay, and less a reason to use images and more a caution on appropriate use. While images can really enhance your site, be careful with how much real estate you give them. On smaller screens, I have a tendency to set large images to hide completely to make room for more important content, like you see here. Notice the image on the right appears on the site's tablet view, but is hidden from view on smaller devices to allow that functional content to fill the initial home screen without the need to scroll. The last piece I'm going to encourage you to use to dazzle your users as they go along their merry way to order that new mouse or ask the IT department about that blue screen of death they saw that one time, is interactive elements. Why? Because they are so cool, but also because they help create focus. A small animation similar to what an image can do can call attention to a part of the page where you want to draw the user's focus. And I am going to show y'all an example of this. This is the web page for Stripe, stripe.com. And if you see here, they've got these little animations that go with the headings for each of their different content sections. This developer one really grabs my attention, but you'll go from this icon and heading that'll lead you to read this content, and as you scroll down the page, your eye automatically gravitates toward the motion here and here, and it keeps you moving along that content. Next, your interactions can be used to reward your users. When they submit a request, you can let that submit button show an animated check mark to confirm that their submission was successful. Did they take care of all their approvals? Let that widget show a one-time animated happy face, including that their work is complete. Yay! Now, convey change, this next point, tends to be the reason and place I use interactive elements the most. This is where hover effects can really come into play. In addition to providing focus, you can animate hover effects to signal action to the user, like to show you the button they're about to click is going to take them somewhere. I'm going to show you all an example of this too. This is a site I've been working on for GlideFast, but these service catalog items right here, as you can see, I've got this set up so that on hover, a little bounce effect is there and it kind of shows, hey, yes, this is the one you're about to click on. And it's a really cute little effect. So it has the tendency to delight your users, and it is okay to delight your users even in something as utilitarian as Service Portal. And again, with the Browse All Services catch-all button, there's a big indicator with that background color change to show them, hey, this is what you're getting ready to do. It's kind of a confirmation. Ultimately, your interactive elements give character and life to your portal. They give the user a greater sense that they are truly interacting with something, and those well-executed animations can really delight your users. It can make the experience of ordering a new mouse a memorable one that they want to repeat the next time they have a request to make. And that about does it. In closing, I'd like to encourage you to dig further into some of these concepts. In the short time that we have here, my goal has been merely to raise your awareness of some of these concepts so you can keep them in mind when putting together a custom design. UI UX is a very big world, and you can get lost researching any one of these concepts. Keep in mind, though, that design is an ever-changing world, and only a Sith deals in absolutes. And I will hand it back to you, Janet.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks. Thanks, Sarah. Excellent. So let's see if any questions come in, and we can answer a couple of them before we announce the giveaway winner. Oh, it looks like we actually got one. So the first question here, and of course, anyone that's still on, please send over questions if you have for Sarah. We'll keep them coming. So the question is, where do you get different ideas for custom design? So where do you get your inspiration? I think the question
Everywhere
really is.
on the interwebs. There are a lot of sites that will show different UX concepts, whether it's navigation, UI concepts, whether it's like a navigation bar and different ways to do that or what have you. I am fond of two sites where designers hang out. One is Dribble, spelled with 3 B's, DRIBBBLE.com, or design. It's a show and tell for designers. And I like to see, this helps me keep up with design trends and see the latest of what people way more in the know with me are doing. And then the other place that's similar to that is Behance, is another place where you'll see a lot of web designers show off their work. That in and of itself helps me keep up with whatever's trending in the design industry. But then there are a lot of other sites. Honestly, I do a lot of Google searching for different elements and then look at different ideas and kind of cobble together what I think is the best approach.
Excellent. This isn't a question, but a comment from Don Bradford. He said, not a question. Want to point out that this was a great presentation. Well done, Sarah. So yay, thanks, Brad.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. All right. Annie Greenfield submitted a question. Thanks, Annie. So she asked, any recommendations on where to learn coding UI UX elements?
I got my start. Now, first of all, I am not a trained developer or a designer. I went to school for political science. Let's see, the Code Academy is one site that I learned to pick up HTML, CSS. A great site to play around if you're testing out CSS concepts and what they do. There's a site called CSS Zen Garden, and I found that as a great place to just have some basic content and just play around with what different CSS tools do. Other places that I've learned, Smashing Magazine is also a great place. They have a lot of tutorials and things like that. But it's been, and the place I go for most of my CSS, how do I do this, is csstricks.com. They actually have a guide to Flexbox that is like the top of my bookmarks because I'm always going back to it. It's the most simply laid out explanation for how to use Flexbox, and I absolutely love it.
Good UI UX there.
Exactly.
Nice. Great. All right. We're getting several questions actually, Sarah. So Janice is wondering what your thoughts or experience are with defining XLAs, user experience service levels, which may include measuring user satisfaction of the portal.
I have seen the surveys used some in a generic sense, but I've not seen anyone use the survey tools in ServiceNow, even on the portal side, much to explore like, is the design something that they like or could go with and everything. And I think, and I'm going to go back to the point I made earlier about testing. I think that our testing practices center mostly around the function of the site. Do all the stories work? Does all the functionality work? Blah, blah, blah. But one thing I really want to encourage is for that user testing stage to move further into getting, Joe Schmuckatelli from marketing that has never worked on Service Portal, would be just your normal everyday user, to come in and sit down and just watch him navigate the site, give him some things he's supposed to do, no instruction on how to do it, and just watch him navigate the site and see what he does. He may totally miss over the fact that you've got a big you've got a button that tells him that takes him right where he needs to go because it's the wrong color or something like that. So I think that even more so than surveys can do a lot to help you. But that is one thing I've not seen a lot is use of the surveys to get feedback on the design.
Awesome.
Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, hopefully. Now they can reach out to you again.
Yes.
Our old friend, old and good friend, Hailey, thanks for your question. So he's asking what's one thing that you see over and over again that would be considered a mistake when trying to build UI UX on a portal?
I would say the fear of going custom. You see so many people that are afraid of custom widgets or going they want to keep it out of box. And you can do some design changes while staying using the out of box. But I mean, even if you want out of box functionality, one of my favorite methods to do so is to clone the out of box and widgets, and then just styling those cloned widgets. And one thing I've loved, we had a client we had to go through a double upgrade with. And because I had convinced this client to let me clone the widgets that they needed for their portal, after that double upgrade, I had to change like one line of code. I had one little heading that didn't work. The rest of it carried through perfectly. And that one little heading was something that was not in a cloned widget. So I like using that method, and it takes some convincing sometimes to get people to be okay with that idea. No, your code is safe, your changes are safe, and if you have any problems, we can just revert back to the out of box and it's cool. But so I see, and then in doing so, you get into, well, we're going to put the CSS on the page or here or there, and it really makes it harder to maintain over time. And Hailey.
Awesome. Hopefully we answered that one. Great. We have a couple more, Sarah, if you want to keep going for a few more minutes.
That's fine.
So thanks to Catherine for her very kind feedback here. Really enjoyed the presentation. And her question is, when designing widgets, what are some good examples and tips on how to use them?
Widgets are just, I look at them from maybe a little bit of a different perspective. They're just content blocks for me, and that you may have content that does one thing or another. I prefer to start from scratch. I find it a lot less confusing to start my own widgets from scratch than to try and go in and edit and figure out somebody else's code. Because, you know, different developers, they put their commentary and everything different ways. But I don't feel like I'm answering the question. Some examples of how to use widgets, it was the question.
Yeah, when you're designing, what are some good examples and tips to use when designing them? Custom designing, I don't know if you showed some fun functionality there.
Mm-hmm. I like to encourage people to remember Service Portal can do, of course, the other Tolson kind of ruined me when he brought me into this industry with Service Portal can do anything. And so I take that as gospel truth. Service Portal can do anything. I have created an entire blog. I've built WordPress on top of Service Portal. I have built content pages out where I had this one client that it was beyond just Service Portal, but they wanted an informational page that talked about one of their internal programs. And so I was building out widgets that just had just content blocks that showed videos and this, that, and the other. So they can be used in that way. But one specific tip I would give is to keep your widgets modular. It's much easier if you have a bunch of widgets that talk to each other on a page rather than having one big widget that does like the whole page's worth of content. It's easier to maintain, it's easier to change, and that would be one thing I would suggest. I hope that helped.
Great. Yeah, I would imagine. Awesome. So Alex from our team has been listening to the presentation. He had a comment that I just wanted to share with everyone on the how to learn Service Portal. So he just wanted us to share that you can also take Service Portal fundamentals and Service Portal Advanced classes from ServiceNow. So if anyone's interested in that, of course, you can reach out to our team to learn a little bit more. So thanks, Alex, for that reminder. Always great content and education out there. All right, we'll do two more. There's two more questions, and then we'll announce the winner. I know that everyone's anxious to find out. So this is an interesting question here, and it's just an opinion. If you think ServiceNow will move away from service portal technology, such as like Angular, or go to different technology anytime soon.
So that's the question right now, especially with the new UX framework. I haven't got to play around with the new framework a lot, but from what I've seen, the new UX framework thus far does some really cool things, but it does not offer the ability to customize and style the way Service Portal does right now. So I don't think Service Portal personally is in danger of going anywhere just yet, because I think I'm seeing more people want custom. They want to move away from the out-of-box look. And I think until the UX framework can offer that, I think you're going to see some clients that want a number of organizations that want to stay on Service Portal. Great.
Cool. Well, see what the future holds, how it evolves. All right, a final one, and then we'll end the Q&A. How often should the branding and design of a portal be updated?
I would say this comes down to user testing and watching the reports, and are your users using it? Are they happy with it? Probably don't want to change too much. Refreshing a design can happen as often or as not often as you want. When I'm putting together a design, I try to find a balance between what's trendy and what is going to like work ongoing. I don't stand at, most of my portals don't sit at the very edge of design, because you don't want something that looks out of style within 6 months. So I would say try to strike that balance between what's trendy and what your users are going to be okay with long term. And as long as they're using it and they're happy with using it, you may not want to move away from that, because maybe they get really attached to that picture of the dog on the homepage or something, you know. So
I love the dogs. Okay, well, thanks, Sarah, so much for answering everyone's questions, and thank you everyone for sticking around and asking them. Let's shift over and we can announce the winner of the giveaway today. All right, so congratulations to Joan Hager. You're the winner of the Visa gift card, so thank you for joining us. Congratulations. We'll email your prize directly, so just look out for the email. And if you didn't win today, don't be discouraged. Every on-air webinar you attend for both GlideFast and our sister company Fair Code counts as an entry into our honor grand prize giveaway, so you could win this really cool mirror here. We'll be selecting the grand prize giveaway winner at the end of June. We are actually extending our series through July, so stay tuned for more information on that. There are a bunch of our new sessions are on our website, and new prizes will be coming out as well. So keeping the fun going through the summertime. And finally, just thank you everyone for attending. We hope you enjoyed Sarah's presentation. Thank you, Sarah. Feel free, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us on social media. We'll be sending some follow-up information via email. So if you wanted to get in contact with Sarah directly, you can reach her in either of those channels. So Sarah, do you have any final words for the audience?
Not really. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please reach out.
Thank you, everyone.